In the 41st millennium, the laws of physics are merely suggestions, and faith reshapes reality itself. But what happens when something from beyond the veil of stars arrives with its own immutable laws? He had burned empires to ash and condemned gods to oblivion in his own reality. Here, in this grim, dark future, he would learn that some wars cannot be won by fire alone. The arrival of Thanos was not heralded by the screaming sirens of a warp rift or the shimmering displacement of a teleportarium. Instead, it was a silent surgical puncture in the fabric of space-time. High above the dead world of Niogeddon, a planet scrubbed clean of life eons ago, the void simply folded. A figure of hulking, violet-hued muscle tumbled from the aperture, his golden armor scarred by the energies of a collapsing universe. Thanos, the mad titan, who did not scream as he fell. He observed. The atmosphere of Niogeddon was a thin, caustic soup of nitrogen and dust, but to an Eternal, it was a minor irritant. As he plummeted through the clouds, his eyes, burning with a cold, predatory intelligence, mapped the surface. He saw the geometry of the world below, unnatural, crystalline, and impossibly precise. There were no oceans, no forests, only vast plains of necrodermis and the dormant spires of a civilization that had cheated death. With a thunderous impact that cracked a continental plate of living metal, Thanos landed. He rose from the crater, shaking the dust of a dead galaxy from his shoulders. He reached for the Infinity Gauntlet, but the stones were cold, dark husks. In this universe, the fundamental constants they controlled were different. The stones were mere jewelry. Yet, Thanos did not despair. His strength was not merely in his trinkets, but in his will. He felt the change immediately. The very air felt heavy, saturated with a psychic noise that gnawed at the edges of his mind, the distant collective scream of a quadrillion souls. This was a universe of suffering, a reality that was not merely broken, but rotting. To Thanos, it was the ultimate challenge. If you're hungry for tales of what-if scenarios that shake the foundations of the 41st millennium, hit subscribe and join the crusade for more content. The Titan began to walk, his heavy boots clanking against the silver soil. He had not gone a kilometer before the ground began to vibrate. Beneath the surface, ancient circuits flickered to life. Green balefire began to glow in the seams of the earth. Thanos stopped, his hand resting on the hilt of his double-edged blade. He was not alone. The sleepers of Niogeddon were waking up, and they did not welcome intruders. The dust of Niogeddon had barely settled around Thanos' boots when the first contact occurred. It was not the silent sentinels of the Necrons that greeted him, but the frantic, desperate roar of humanity. A long-range reconnaissance spearhead of the Astra Militarum, specifically the 44th Cadian Grey Vipers, had been deployed to this dead world to investigate the same energy spikes that had heralded the Titan's arrival. From the crest of a jagged obsidian ridge, 3 Chimera armored transports crested the horizon, their multi-lasers swiveling with mechanical paranoia. To the soldiers inside, Thanos was an impossibility, a Xenos of unknown classification, standing nearly 8 feet tall, unarmored by any recognizable void suit, and radiating an aura of such profound authority that it felt like a physical weight on their chests. "Abominable Xenos, open fire!" The command barked over the Vox casters, distorted by the static of the thinning atmosphere. The Chimeras didn't hesitate. Heavy bolters chattered, sending fist-sized explosive rounds screaming toward the purple giant. Thanos didn't flinch. He watched the incoming fire with the detached interest of a scientist observing a chemical reaction. As the first shells struck his chest and shoulders, they didn't penetrate. They detonated against his toughened eternal hide, leaving nothing but scorched soot and shallow abrasions. To Thanos, the shattering power of a bolter felt like nothing more than a stinging hail. He sprinted. The ground buckled under his stride, his massive frame moving with a deceptive, predatory grace that defied his bulk. In seconds, he was upon the lead chimera. With a roar of exertion, till he plunged his bare hands into the frontal glacis plate, the thick ceramite and steel shearing like wet parchment. He ripped the top of the vehicle off, exposing the terrified guardsmen within. Before they could level their laser guns, Thanos swung his double-bladed sword in a blinding arc. The energized steel, forged in the heart of a dying star in his own realm, proved remarkably resilient, even without the Infinity Stones. It sliced through the Chimera's hull and the men inside with terrifying ease. One guardsman, a young sergeant named Krell, managed to fire a point-blank last burst into Thanos' face. The beam cauterized a line across the Titan's cheek, drawing a trickle of thick, dark blood. Thanos paused, touching the wound, then looked at the sergeant. There was no anger in his eyes, only a cold, terrifying pity. "You fight for a corpse on a throne," Thanos rumbled, his voice a deep, melodic bass that seemed to vibrate in Krell's very marrow. "I will give you a swifter end than your emperor ever could." He didn't kill the sergeant immediately. Instead, he reached into the ruined transport and seized the command Vox array and a portable cogitator. As the other two chimeras turned to flee, Thanos picked up a discarded heavy bolter with one hand, braced it against his hip, and fired with a precision no human could match. He didn't aim for the hulls. He aimed for the fuel lines and engine manifolds. The transports erupted in twin plumes of promethium flame. With the immediate threat neutralized, Thanos sat amidst the burning wreckage and began his true work. He forced the captured Sergeant Krell to operate the cogitator, on demanding a history of this galaxy. As the flickering green screen displayed maps of the Imperium, the nature of the warp, and the endless great works of the Inquisition, Thanos' expression shifted from curiosity to a grim, dark resolve. He saw a galaxy of 1,000,000 worlds strangled by its own shadow, a species so terrified of extinction that it had become a monster. He learned of the Chaos Gods, the parasitic entities of the Immaterium that fed on this very suffering. To Thanos, the conclusion was obvious. This universe was not just overpopulated, it was fundamentally diseased. It needed more than a pruning. It needed a new architect. But as he began to formulate a plan to harvest the resources of this sector, the silver ground beneath him let out a low, thrumming moan. The Imperial Guard had merely been the alarm clock. The masters of Niogeddon were finally awake. The silver dunes of Niogeddon did not merely shift, they unraveled. As the last echoes of the Imperial Vox chatter faded into the thin air, the ground beneath the burning chimeras liquefied into a sea of scarab-like nanites. Thanos stood, dropping the useless Imperial cogitator as the atmosphere grew heavy with the ozone tang of ancient power. From the depths of the planet's crust, monolithic structures of black stone and glowing emerald circuitry rose like the tombstones of a forgotten god. This was no longer a battlefield. It was an awakening. The Sarikhan dynasty, keepers of the Silent King's primary protocols, had detected a soul signature so dense and alien that it bypassed their standard threat-scrubbing subroutines. And from a shimmering veil of green light, a dimensional gateway known as a translocation beam, the first rank of Necron warriors emerged. They moved with a terrifying, synchronized jerkiness, their skeletal metallic frames clicking in a rhythm that spoke of a 60-million-year slumber. Without a word, they leveled their Gauss flares. Thanos watched as the air between him and the mechanical phalanx began to crackle. The first volley of Gauss fire was a stream of emerald particles designed to strip an opponent down to their constituent atoms by breaking molecular bonds. Thanos raised his arms to shield his face, expecting the heat of plasma or the impact of lead. Instead, he felt his very skin begin to peel away in microscopic layers, the green beams attempting to deconstruct his eternal physiology. The Titan let out a guttural roar. the pain fueling a surge of adrenaline that defied the Necron's cold logic. His skin, dense enough to survive the vacuum of space, resisted the deatomization, healing at a rate that baffled the Necron's engrammatic processors. Thanos charged. He was a purple blur of violence, slamming into the first rank of warriors like a comet. He didn't just strike them, he pulverized them. With his bare hands, he tore the necrodermis limbs from their sockets, crushing the self-repairing circuits within their chest cavities. He found that while these soldiers were resilient, they lacked the spark of life, the very thing he usually sought to balance. To Thanos, they were merely broken machines that refused to stay down. Pathetic, Thanos spat, kicking the torso of a warrior into the path of an advancing immortal. Don't you have traded your souls for immortality, only to become mindless husks? A voice, cold and resonating like the grinding of tectonic plates, answered him. A soul is a heavy price for survival, stranger, but one we paid long ago. You, however, possess a spark that is radiant, an anomaly. Thanos turned to see a Lich-Guard phalanx parting to make way for a towering figure. It was a Necron overlord, draped in a tattered cloak of flayed skin and gold, carrying a hyperphase glaive that vibrated with a lethal frequency. This was Overlord Amenhotep, a subordinate of the Silent King. Behind him, a massive canoptek spider loomed, its many eyes fixing on Thanos with clinical detachment. The Overlord didn't attack immediately, but he observed the way Thanos' wounds closed, the way the Titan's biology seemed to defy the entropic laws of the 41st millennium. Thanos straightened his posture, wiping a streak of dark ichor from his brow. He recognized the look in the Overlord's glowing oculars. It was the look of a collector. "I am Thanos of Titan," he declared, his voice booming across the metallic plains. "I've wiped out half of all life in my own realm to ensure the survival of the rest. I find your species fascinating, Metal Man. You have achieved a perfect stagnation. No hunger, no growth, no waste, but you lack purpose." Amenhotep raised his glaive, the green energy flaring. "Our purpose is the reclamation of the stars. You are a biological wonder, a vessel of immense durability. My king has sought a way to return our consciousness to flesh. Now, perhaps you are the blueprint we have been waiting for. You will be harvested, Titan. Your balance ends here." Thanos smiled, a terrifying expression that promised nothing but ruin. "Many have tried to harvest me, little machine. They are all dust. If your king wants my secrets, tell him to come and claim them himself. Until then, I shall treat your immortal legion as I treat any other weed in my garden." The Titan gripped his double-bladed sword, the metal humming as it tasted the strange energies of the Necron world. The skirmish was over. The war for Niogeddon had begun. The atmosphere of Niogeddon shifted from the static of war to the heavy, oppressive silence of a tomb. Thanos stood amidst a mountain of mangled necrodermis, his golden armor pitted by gauze fire, but his resolve unshaken. He had expected the Overlord to strike, but instead, the Necron Legion froze mid-stride. A low-frequency hum vibrated through the very core of the planet, and the emerald sky darkened as a massive, crescent-shaped vessel, the Song of Oblivion, descended from the void. This was the personal flagship of Zarek, the Silent King. A beam of pure white light struck the ground between Thanos and the Overlord. When the radiance faded, a figure stood there that demanded even the Mad Titan's respect. Zarek was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, his body crafted from the finest living metal, he draped in a cloak of shimmering starlight. He did not speak through a vox grill or telepathy. Instead, a series of sub-dimensional harmonics translated his intent directly into Thanos' mind. It was a voice of absolute authority, refined over millions of years of solitude. "You are a creature of singular will." The Silent King's presence echoed in Thanos' psyche. "You carry the weight of a galaxy's sins upon your shoulders. We are not so different, Titan." Thanos narrowed his eyes, his hand still tight on the hilt of his blade. I do not seek kin, King of Tin. I seek a way to fix what is broken. I've seen your galaxy. It is a slaughterhouse. Your people are statues, and the living are cattle for the slaughter. My mission is to bring order through pruning. What is your mission, other than to wait for the universe to go cold? The silent king stepped forward, his mechanical movements fluid and hauntingly lifelike. He gestured to the stars above. My people were deceived. We traded our souls for a life that is no life at all. I seek the reversal of the Great Era. Biotransference. I need a vessel strong enough to house a mind that has spanned eons. You, Thanos, represent a biological perfection I have not seen since the dawn of the Krog. You are the apex of what life can be. You want to use me as a mold for your resurrection. Thanos rumbled, a dark chuckle escaping his throat. You wish to trade your cage of metal for a cage of flesh. You think that being mortal will save you? I've spent my life proving that mortality is the very disease that destroys civilizations. Hunger, greed, and overpopulation will consume you, just as they consumed my world. The two masters of destiny stood in the shadow of the great ship, a purple giant of muscle and a silver king of circuits. It was a diplomatic summit unlike any the 41st millennium had ever witnessed. Thanos spoke of the Malthusian catastrophe, of the inherent greed of biological life, and his mercy of the snap. Zarek listened, his ancient engrams processing the Titan's logic. To the Silent King, Thanos' plan was crude, a temporary fix for a permanent problem. So, to Thanos, Zarek's goal was a regression, a weak-willed desire to return to a state of vulnerability. Your balance is a child's dream, Zarek communicated, the air around him shimmering with displacement fields. You kill half to save half, but the cycle simply begins anew. I offer a different path. Join me. With your genetic blueprint and my technology, we can rewrite the laws of biology. We can create a race that does not need to consume, yet still feels the pulse of the universe. We can end the hunger forever. Thanos looked at the Silent King, and for a moment there was a spark of something like admiration in his gaze, but it was quickly extinguished by his own unshakable dogma. You speak of creation, I speak of correction. You want to be a god of a new world. I am content to be the janitor of the old one. We are irreconcilable, Zarek. You seek to save your race, I seek to save reality itself. The Silent King tilted his head, a gesture of profound disappointment. Then you are merely a ghost of the past, clinging to a failed philosophy. If you will not be our blueprint, you will be our prisoner. My technicians will peel back your secrets, layer by agonizing layer. Then let the lesson begin, Thanos replied, settling into a combat stance. I have broken more than kings in my time. I have broken the stars themselves. The truce was over before it had truly begun. Two cosmic saviors had found their mirror, and both had decided that the other was a flaw that needed to be erased. Thanos did not wait for the Silent King to strike. He knew that in a galaxy of such overwhelming scale, power was not just about strength, it was about momentum. While Zarek was a master of patience, Thanos was a master of the initiative. Instead of engaging the King's elite guard in a war of attrition, the Titan executed a daring tactical retreat, using the chaos of the shifting Necron tombs to hijack a Shroud-class light cruiser. The ship's automated systems recoiled at his touch, but Thanos' intellect was a weapon in its own right. He bypassed the cryptech locks through sheer brute force and a foundational understanding of energy dynamics, slaving the ship's sentient machine spirit to his will. He did not flee the sector, he began to prune it. Thanos targeted the nearby world of Vogan's Reach, a teeming hive world that served as a vital logistical hub for the Imperial Guard. To Thanos, Vogan's Reach was a crime against the universe. 40 billion souls were crammed into spire cities that belched toxic filth into the atmosphere, while the lower levels starved in the dark. It was the epitome of the imbalance he loathed. Commanding the stolen Necron vessel with the cold efficiency of a seasoned admiral, he bypassed the orbital defense grids. He didn't use the ship's gas annihilators to glass the planet. That would be waste. Instead, he utilized the ship's translocation beams to descend into the Hive's primary food processing districts. The great pruning began not with a bang, but with a terrifyingly methodical slaughter. And Thanos led a small cohort of reprogrammed Necron warriors, units he had rebalanced by stripping away their connection to the central command node and slaving them to his personal biometric signature. They marched through the crowded hab blocks like silver reapers. For every 2 citizens they encountered, one was vaporized by green fire. Thanos himself walked the streets, his double-bladed sword carving through the local enforcers and PDF units as if they were made of parchment. "Do not fight," Thanos boomed, his voice amplified by the Hive's voxcasters. "You are being saved. Look at your brothers, your sisters. They starve so that you may feast. I'm simply making the math work. In your death, you provide life for the survivors. This is the only mercy you have ever known." The Inquisition, however, did not see it as mercy. The word of the purple Xenos and his silver cult reached the Ordo Xenos. Inquisitor Vol of the Death Watch was dispatched immediately. He watched the grainy pick feeds of the Titan calmly walking through the carnage, stopping occasionally to pat a terrified child on the head before turning to execute their father. Val saw the pattern, the terrifying, cold-blooded logic of the mad Titan. Unlike the orcs who killed for joy, or the Tyranids who killed for hunger, this being killed because he believed it was right. By the time the Death Watch reached Vogan's Reach, Thanos had already redistributed the Hive's remaining grain silos and purified the water table using Necron tech. The population had been halved, but for the first time in 3 centuries, the survivors were not starving. Thanos sat upon the governor's throne, his armor stained with the blood of 20 billion people, looking out over a city that was finally quiet. He had created a twisted utopia in the heart of the Imperium, and in doing so, he'd signaled to every power in the galaxy that a new player had entered the great game. One who didn't want their souls, but their compliance to his grand equation. Thanos did not have long to savor his grim victory on Vogan's Reach. As the survivors crawled from their hab blocks to find the air strangely clear and the ration lines short, the sky above the Hive spires began to bleed. The massive influx of sudden, violent death had acted as a beacon in the Empyrean. The warp, ever a predator of concentrated suffering, tore open. A localized rift pulsed with the sickly violet light of the Immaterium, and the Warp Eater, a colossal, greater demon of Tzeentch known as the Weaver of Paradox, spilled into reality, followed by a screaming tide of pink horrors and flamers. The mad Titan stood on the observation balcony of the governor's palace, watching the unnatural storm swirl. In his own universe, the supernatural was often tied to cosmic constants or infinity stones. Here, the magic was a sentient and hungry cancer. As the first wave of demons materialized on the palace grounds, Thanos felt a strange sensation in his chest, a cold, hollow pressure. The warp was reacting to him. Because Thanos possessed a soul of immense density and singular focus, he was like a black hole in the warp's currents. The demons were drawn to him not just to kill, but to consume the sheer narrative weight of his existence. "You are a cacophony of order in a symphony of chaos," the Weaver of Paradox hissed, its voice echoing in 19 dimensions at once. It cast a bolt of change fire that should have turned Thanos into a pile of writhing tentacles. Thanos stepped into the blast. The warp fire licked at his skin, but the Titan's will was so immutable, his sense of self so absolute, that the change could not take hold. To the warp, Thanos was a null event. a being whose reality was so fixed that the shifting tides of the immaterium broke against him like waves against a cliff. With a roar, Thanos leaped from the balcony, his double-bladed sword wreathed in the green blackstone energy he had siphoned from the stolen Necron ship. The battle was a collision of fundamental forces. Thanos fought with a brutal, mathematical precision, his blade cutting through the ethereal bodies of the demons as if they were physical flesh. He realized that the black stone tech he carried was the perfect counter to these creatures of the Veil. Every strike of his sword didn't just kill a demon. It stabilized the reality around it, slamming the door on the warp. He moved through the horde like a god of stasis, his violet skin glowing with the feedback of the conflict. As he reached the greater demon, the Weaver attempted to show Thanos a vision, a universe where the snap failed, where his home world of Titan flourished without his intervention. It was a psychic trap designed to shatter his resolve. But Thanos merely gripped the demon's throat with a gauntleted hand. "I have seen every possible outcome," Thanos growled, his voice cutting through the demon's whispers. "I am the only one with the will to act. Your chaos is just another form of waste." With a surge of strength, Thanos didn't just crush the demon's windpipe, he exerted his will upon the localized rift itself. Using his understanding of matter manipulation, even without the stones, he focused the black stone energy through his own body, acting as a conductor. The rift did not just close, it imploded, sucked into the void of the Titan's absolute certainty. The sky of Vogan's Reach returned to its smoggy gray, leaving Thanos standing alone amidst the dissolving remains of the warp spawn. He had learned a vital lesson. In this universe, his soul was a weapon. But he also knew that the Silent King was watching this display, and Zarek would not allow such a potent anomaly to remain free for long. The Silent King had seen enough. From the bridge of the Song of Oblivion, Zarek watched the data tapestries of Thanos' victory over the warp. The Titan was no longer just a biological curiosity. He was a metaphysical threat. If a single being could act as a living pylon, stabilizing reality through sheer force of ego, he was a variable the Necrons could not control. Zarek reached into the depths of his ship's stasis crypts, bypassing the safety protocols that even the highest cryptex feared to touch. He would not send legions this time, he would send a fragment of a god. On the surface of Vogan's Reach, Thanos was overseeing the reconstruction of the Hive's logistical heart when the air grew cold, colder than the vacuum of space. The sun seemed to dim, its light leached away by a shimmering and translucent cage that materialized in the center of the plaza. Inside the cage was a being of pure, weeping energy, a shard of Magladroth, the Void Dragon. This was a sliver of the Citan that had once taught the Necrons how to conquer the stars, a creature that commanded the fundamental forces of the material universe. "You speak of balance." The shard vibrated, its voice a symphony of shearing metal, "but you are a creature of flesh. Flesh is a mistake of chemistry. We are the architects of the real." The cage shattered. The Void Dragon did not fly, it simply redefined its position in space. Thanos barely had time to raise his blade before a wave of graviton force slammed into him, pinning him to the ground with the weight of a dying star. His eternal bones groaned. Now the density of his skeleton the only thing preventing him from being flattened into a violet smear. This was not a demon. This was a master of the physical realm, and it was stripping away Thanos' ability to fight back. Thanos gritted his teeth, the blood in his veins boiling under the pressure. He realized then that the Silent King's gambit was a test of sovereignty. Zarek was asserting that in this universe, the Necrons owned the laws of physics. Thanos, the conqueror of Titan, was being treated as a gravity-bound insect. With a roar of pure defiance, the Titan forced himself to one knee. He reached for the stolen Blackstone energy cells strapped to his belt, crushing them in his bare hands. He didn't use them to power a weapon. He let the stabilizing energy flow into his own nervous system. He's creating a pocket of fixed reality that neutralized the Citan's gravitational manipulation. "I have stood before the Celestials," Thanos wheezed, standing upright as the ground around him cracked and floated into the air. "I have held the power to rewrite existence. You are but a broken mirror of a dead god. I will show you what a real god looks like." The Void Dragon shrieked, a sound that short-circuited every electronic device within 5 miles. It lashed out with tails of liquid lightning, each strike capable of melting a mountain. Thanos didn't dodge. He waded through the lightning, his skin charring and sloughing off, only to be replaced by raw, pulsing muscle. He was a vision of agonizing resilience. He caught one of the dragon's energy tails in his hand, the heat turning his palm into a cauterized ruin, and pulled, where the Citan shard was momentarily hauled from its ethereal hover. And in that second, Thanos saw the king's true intent. The shard was being used to measure the Titan's limits. Far above, the Song of Oblivion was charging its main weapon. Zarek wasn't just trying to kill Thanos. He was preparing to harvest the data of his death. The duel between the Mad Titan and the Shard of the Void Dragon turned the Plaza of Vogan's Reach into a crucible of impossible physics. Every time the Citan reached out to unravel Thanos' molecular structure, the Titan's sheer force of will, bolstered by the stolen Blackstone radiation, forced his atoms back into alignment. It was a battle of cosmic ego. The Void Dragon represented the cold, mathematical laws of the universe, while Thanos represented the indomitable drive of a sentient mind to impose its own meaning upon that universe. Thanos realized that he could not win a war of attrition against a being that didn't truly possess a physical body. He needed to strike at the tether, the Necron containment fields that kept the shard anchored to this reality. Using his genius-level intellect, he analyzed the rhythmic pulses of the emerald energy lattice surrounding the Citan. He saw the flicker, a microsecond lapse in the containment frequency every time the shard unleashed a major burst of power. Waiting for the perfect moment, Thanos allowed the Void Dragon to impale him with a spear of solidified light. The agony was transcendental, the energy bypassing his nerves and striking directly at his essence. But as the shard leaned in to finish the biological anomaly, Thanos grabbed the spear with both hands, using his own body as a conductor. He redirected the energy downward, slamming his fist into the ground where the Necron pylon nodes were buried. The feedback loop was catastrophic. The containment field flared and then collapsed in a blinding jade explosion. Without its tether, the shard began to bleed back into the fundamental fabric of reality, its form becoming erratic and unstable. In its final moments of cohesion, the dragon let out a psychic wail that flattened every building within a 3-block radius. Thanos was thrown back like a rag doll, his armor shattered, his violet skin weeping from 100 rents. He lay in the rubble, breathing heavily, his vision swimming. For the first time since arriving in this grimdark future, he was genuinely exhausted. "Is this the best your king can offer?" Thanos rasped, looking up at the darkening sky. The response was not a voice, but a shadow. The Song of Oblivion had moved directly overhead, its massive ventral aperture glowing with a terrifying, white-hot intensity. The Silent King had seen enough of the trial. The data was collected. The limits of the eternal were mapped, and now the harvest would begin. A stasis beam, thousands of times more powerful than the ones used on Vogan's Reach, descended. Thanos tried to rise, but his muscles failed him. The beam hit him with the force of a falling moon, freezing him in a shimmering cage of zero time. As he was pulled upward into the gut of the Necron flagship, Thanos didn't feel fear. He felt a grim satisfaction. He was finally going to the heart of the enemy. The interior of the Song of Oblivion was a labyrinth of impossible geometry, where gravity shifted at the whim of the ship's sentient core. Thanos was not placed in a cage of bars, but suspended within a chronostatic suspension field in the heart of the great Cryptek laboratory. Around him, dozens of plasmancers and technomandrites drifted on hover discs, their multi-jointed metallic limbs wielding surgical beams that probed the Titan's stilled form. They were not merely looking at his organs, they were mapping the resonance of his soul, trying to understand how a biological entity could possess a will that acted as a stabilizing pylon against the warp. However, the Silent King had made one fatal error. He had underestimated the sheer autonomy of an Eternal's mind. While Thanos' body was frozen in a moment of stolen time, his consciousness remained hyperactive. He had spent decades mastering meditative techniques that allowed his mind to operate independently of his physical senses. Within the silent void of his own thoughts, Thanos began to interface with the stasis field. He didn't use hacking tools. He used the fundamental understanding of energy he had garnered from the Infinity Stones. He began to subtly vibrate his own atomic structure, creating a harmonic dissonance that slowly eroded the Necron field from the inside out. The breakout was a symphony of destruction. One moment, the Titan was a silent statue. The next, the suspension field shattered like glass, sending a shockwave of chronal energy through the lab that aged the surrounding Necron attendants by 1,000 years in a second, turning their living metal into brittle, rusted husks. And Thanos hit the floor, his strength returning in a sudden, violent rush. He didn't flee. He went on the offensive. He moved through the flagship like a force of nature. He knew he couldn't win a head-on fight against the entire Sarikhan fleet, so he targeted the ship's dolmen gates, the Necron technology used to breach the webway. If he could seize control of the ship's navigation, he could take this fight to the heart of the Necron Empire, or perhaps to Terra itself. As he tore through a bulkhead of reinforced necrodermis, he was met by the Praetorian Guard, the elite of the elite, sworn to protect the Silent King. "You are a plague upon the great work," the lead Praetorian buzzed, leveling a rod of covenant. Thanos didn't bother to answer. He ducked under a beam of disintegration and caught the Praetorian by its head, then slamming the machine into the floor with enough force to breach the deck plating. He was no longer just fighting for survival. He was fighting for the throne of this galaxy. He realized that Zarek's Song of Oblivion was the ultimate weapon of order. If he could take it, he wouldn't need a snap of his fingers to balance the universe. He would have the ultimate pruning shears. The siege of the flagship reached its crescendo as Thanos reached the Bridge of Stars. There, standing before a holographic map of the galaxy, was Zarek. The Silent King turned, his golden cape flowing behind him, his spear of starlight leveled at the Titan's heart. The two Titans of purpose faced each other once more, but this time, there were no words. The flagship shook as Thanos charged, his roar of defiance echoing through the cold, metallic halls of the Necron godship. The Bridge of Stars became a localized apocalypse. When Thanos and Zarek collided, the shockwave blew out the reinforced viewing ports, exposing the bridge to the cold, airless void. Yet neither king succumbed to the vacuum. The Silent King fought with a mathematical elegance, his spear of the Silent King carving ribbons of white fire through the air. Thanos, however, fought with the desperate, raw fury of a predator who had seen the end of all things. He caught the shaft of the king's spear, the energy searing the flesh from his palms down to the bone, and pulled the Necron monarch into a brutal headbutt that cracked Zarek's golden faceplate. "You call yourself a king?" Thanos roared, his voice carrying even through the airless bridge via the sheer vibration of his will. "You are nothing but a ghost in a gilded cage. I am the inevitability you fear." The duel shifted as Zarek activated his sempiternal weave, his body flickering in and out of phased reality. He struck at Thanos from angles that shouldn't exist, his blade tasting the Titan's eternal blood. But Thanos had learned. He reached into the ship's primary power conduit, a pulsing vein of pure, harnessed starlight, and plunged his hand into it. He became a conduit for the flagship's own energy, his purple skin glowing with a blinding, incandescent light. He used the ship's power to anchor Zarek to the present moment, dragging the king out of phase and slamming him onto the command throne. The ship groaned under the strain of their conflict. Below them, Vogan's Reach had become a silent graveyard, and around them, the Necron fleet waited for a signal that would never come. In the end, so the duel did not conclude with a death, but a stalemate of profound consequences. Thanos realized he could not kill the Silent King within his own fortress, and Zarek realized that to destroy the Titan would be to destroy the most perfect biological data set in existence. With a final, explosive surge of power, Thanos forced the Dolmen Gate to activate, slaving it to a random coordinate in the segmentum solar. As the Song of Oblivion tore through the veil of reality, Thanos cast himself into the shimmering portal, leaving the Silent King alone on his cracked throne. The Titan emerged weeks later on the fringes of the Ultramar system, his armor gone, his body a map of scars, but his eyes burning with a new, terrible purpose. He had seen the heights of Xenos technology and the depths of human despair, but he knew now that the 41st millennium could not be saved by a single act of mass murder. It required a permanent, iron-fisted gardener. Thanos began to gather the broken, the disillusioned, and the desperate from the fringes of the Imperium. He did not call them a cult, he called them the Balanced. He had become a dark architect in a universe of ash, a third power rising between the stagnation of the throne and the madness of the warp. The Silent King remains in the shadows, repairing his ship and waiting, for he knows that the Titan is the only being who can truly test the mettle of the Necron race. The great game has changed. The Mad Titan has found a home in the grim darkness, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy is truly, terrifyingly balanced. So the collision between Thanos of Titan and the Silent King has left the 41st millennium permanently scarred. What began as an accidental arrival transformed into a philosophical war that shook the foundations of both the Imperium and the Necron dynasties. Thanos did not find the Infinity Stones in this reality, but he found something far more potent, a universe that justified his darkest impulses. By standing toe-to-toe with the Void Dragon and the Silent King, he proved that his eternal will is a force that even the most ancient super science cannot fully suppress. The aftermath of their duel has created a new status quo. The Silent King now views biological life not just as a vessel to be reclaimed, but as a potential rival for the sovereignty of reality. Meanwhile, Thanos has established himself as a rogue power, and a warlord of logic who prunes worlds with a terrifying, calculated mercy. He has become a nightmare for the Inquisition, a Xenos who doesn't want to destroy humanity, but to fix it by removing the burden of its excess. In the end, Thanos belongs to neither his old world nor this new one. He has forged a third path, one of cold order and brutal sustainability. Whether his presence leads to a galaxy that can finally breathe or a silent graveyard of perfectly balanced husks remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is now a Titan who believes that even the Emperor's work was incomplete. The gardener has arrived, and he has brought his shears. The Emperor protects. More stories await. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.